Okay, we're live.
Okay. I'm gonna get that perfect profile for walking by. Okay. When should I do it? Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, as soon as you turn, like getting your walking by posture.
Get in my walking by posture. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Mo.
Oh, hey, Thomas.
Hey,
damn it. Okay, start over. I said Thomas.
I know. Hey, improv, man. You just roll with it.
Yeah. Okay, my bad.
Hey, Mo.
Oh, hey, John. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going? How was your rotation?
Good. It's going pretty good. You got a couple minutes? You want to chat?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to hear about things you learned and some of your struggles as well.
Really? Some of the things I learned, some of my struggles as well. Well, where should I start?
Yeah. Well, first, maybe you should just give me an overview of your rotation. Where were you? What'd you do?
Sure. I'm in Zurich right now. It's headquarters for ABB. That's a client that we have. Big, they make power plant equipment, probably 60+% of the power plant equipment, transformers, stuff like that in the world. They make it. Very big company, about 120,000 people. And we took a contract to basically outsource all of their IT stuff. So before they were like, here's the geography, here's the geography, here's the geography, here's geography, all in-house IT, all CIOs, all these multiple CIOs with their own budgets, and you can't even see that. But anyway, so it's like a business school case study. Yeah, great win for Wipro. It's the GCP grew it from, I think, 10 million to 500 million, something just absurd in about 5 years. So it was great. Anyway, yeah, I'm here. Been here for 3 months with a short stint in Romania with our service desk there.
Oh, great. I heard a lot of good things about the service desk.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Well, I'm here in Houston, Texas, in the U.S.
Funny we should run into each other like this.
Sorry?
Funny we should run into each other like this.
Yeah.
Me being in Houston, me being in Zurich.
Right. It really is. I'm glad that, this kind of circumstance happened where we can really catch up before we go into the session.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. It's okay. So I'm in the Energy, Natural Resources, and Utilities BU, or ENU, as we call it, working primarily in oil and gas here in Houston, Texas, which, as you know, is a pretty big hub for oil and gas.
I've heard.
Here, I'm working with a lot of really high-level people, including the head of oil and gas for all of Wipro, who's basically, yeah. So I get a lot of really good exposure, working with some exploratory projects in the Anchorage, Alaska market. I got to work on our business development decision to figure out if we should invest more resources into that market. And primarily, though, I work in the terminal automation space, which means coming up with solutions and figuring out how we market to big terminal distributors here in the U.S. and all over the world to make their terminals more efficient, to make the paperwork less cumbersome, and to overall make the terminals a lot safer.
Could you explain what a terminal is?
Sure. So in oil and gas, you have upstream and downstream. And the upstream is typically your refineries and your drilling activities, which Wipro plays a big role in as well. But I work primarily in downstream, which is a lot of your oil distribution. So once the oil comes from the pipeline, per se, and it gets to a big holding facility. So you might see big tanks off the side of the road down here in Texas. So those big tankers are terminals. And you often see trucks pull up to those terminals to load up their products. That could be liquefied natural gas. It could be gasoline that would go to a gas station, for example. It could be crude. So once they get to that terminal, they'll fill up the tanker or the truck or the pipeline or the barge a lot of times and ship it out downstream, eventually to the consumer or to the customer.
Yeah.
So the terminal is a distribution point.
Okay, so you guys help add precision to measuring, like, I guess, outflows of whatever product through those terminals.
We manage the entire IT for the whole terminal. So if you can imagine a trucker pulling up to a terminal, he needs to be verified that he should even be within those gates, and then verified that his truck is safe. That
And there's not people there?
there are people there, but
Okay.
when you have a huge queue of trucks all waiting to get into the terminal and all waiting to load up and figure out what they should load, if the inventory is even there, and then where they should take it afterwards, the more we can automate that process and the more we can really leverage the data collection so that we can automatically verify the driver, the truck, the company they work for, and the bill of lading, as we call it, to determine who really owns the product that they're carrying. If the better we can bring that process digital, the better the client experience is, and the better Wipro can serve that client.
I don't know why, but I feel like we're talking about something that isn't meant for public eyes. Like, if I were to witness this whole process happening, that somebody might shoo me away. I've never seen this. I didn't even know anything about this process, but I imagine like a dozen 18-wheelers lined up getting this product. It's interesting.
Yeah, right. And so the terminal automation space, it includes the terminal itself to make sure that their equipment and the technology there is automated, but it also includes the truckers and all the third parties who come into place. And that's what really Wipro's value add is making sure that if a Shell truck pulls up to a BP terminal, they're speaking the same language, and that trucker can get that product that he needs and get that invoice accounted for all instantaneously instead of having paper receipts. And we know how much we all hate paper receipts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, John, I think we could talk about this all day. But if I had to push you and say, what's 3 things that you contributed, learned, or took away from your rotation, what would those be?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. If I had to think about it, I'd say one of the things that I think I really learned is a deep dive into E&U. I had no idea what this vertical did or how they operated, but I learned about not just our oil and gas operations, but the constructions and the airports and the physical ports. So just a lot of our E&U practice that I had no idea existed. I think the second thing I learned is within oil and gas, who the big players are and how their operations flow. I got to work a lot with the salespeople to figure out where the opportunities lie. And so getting into, say, a BP sales process and figuring out how Wipro is a part of that process, from making the business case to delivering the solution to the afterwards maintenance, I think has been really key for me. If I had to think of a third thing, it might be...
1/3.
Yeah. I'd say the biggest takeaway for me was really getting to understand what life would be like after the G100 program. I have a really good manager here, and we had really good conversations about what the future might be for me here in E&U, and being very supported on what a career would look like within Wipro and how my trajectory might grow after I leave the Global 100 program.
So that shoe kind of fits, huh?
It really does. It really does. I really like this rotation. I really like the people I work with, the projects I'm working on, and the location. Houston is one of the best places to be outside of my hometown of Chicago.
Wonderful.
So what about you, Mo? What would you say were 3 things or takeaways you had from your rotation?
Again, that's a good question. I would start with number 1, the nuts and bolts of a large-scale IT outsourcing. My depth of knowledge was no more than what would be in like a business school case study, which is, here's a big company that does power and robotics and all this stuff. That's their core competence. Surely they shouldn't spend so much money and redundancy on IT. I know, let's outsource it to someone whose core competence is IT, right? So that's great at the theory level, but this rotation's given me the opportunity to kind of be in the command center, as it were, in the client location with the account delivery head and all like the senior leaders, and see not just the scope, but the difficulty and I mean, in the meanings of everything. So it's really been kind of just nose to tail, starting with me Googling what is EUC, end user computing, and then, and just looking at all the different processes that we take for granted but exist in any organization, from how you get a laptop to how often it's refreshed, to who manages your antivirus, to who checks if you have a license for X software, and on and on and on. And then seeing, even for a company whose core competence is doing those things, what's the complexity involved with the 1,70,000 outsourcing organization providing it to a 1,20,000 company that is spread across 100 countries. So that's number one.
Oh, go
Number
ahead.
two, what's a global team? Again, all I had was like a textbook notion in my head, yet the core team that I work with, Lithuanian guy, Indian guy, is the two key managers on the Wipro side. On the client side that we interface with, this lady from the Netherlands, which is, she's also Dutch, okay, and Lithuanian guy. Anyway, it's a global team. Everybody's here.
That's great.
Yeah, and then number three is I took this thing called the Hogan assessment, and I'm just like, it looks into your soul. That's all I'll say. Hogan assessment. I've taken some personality tests and stuff like that in the past, but I took this Hogan assessment as part of the coaching that they offered, and I was blown away. It like almost knew me better than I knew myself.
Mo, would you recommend the Hogan assessment to a colleague like myself who's interested in their development?
I certainly would.
Great. That's my learning plan. Thanks.
I mean, but this is a lot of talk, John, about what we learned, blah, blah, blah. How about what was hard? You know, why don't we talk a little bit about that? 3 items.
Yeah, there were some challenges in my rotation, I will say. I think a lot of my challenges revolved around one research project that I did. So I mentioned earlier that I got to decide, or help decide, if we should invest more resources into the Anchorage, Alaska market. And the biggest challenge with that project was getting time from the executives. So I had a list of people that I needed to interview that all had varying interests in my project. So talking to, say, the head of airports for Wipro was a challenge. And then talking to the head of ports was also a challenge, and convincing them that my project was worth their time. And that really helped me develop my executive presence. I think the second challenge from there, was once I got a lot of the information, a lot of it seemed to conflict with each other. I would hear different things from the guys on the ground in Anchorage, which were different from our people here in Houston, which was different from the other stakeholders really around the world. And so really being able to trust the information, but verify to make sure that I was getting the correct information that would really help my project. And then the third challenge, once I had all the conflicting information, is really being able to put it together in a presentation where I could really balance the objectives of all the stakeholders to make sure that my presentation was objective, it was conclusive, and it really was comprehensive. So even though I had conflicting information and sources, to bring it all together in a format that really made sense for our BU head so he can make a decision going forward.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So let me flip back over to you. What are 3 things that you struggle with in your rotation?
I'd say the first is really dealing with multiple stakeholders and multiple, I guess, objectives, right? The shortest way I could put it was I encountered stakeholders who would row the other direction, as they say. Yes. So that was one challenge, and kind of managing that or mitigating, working around all the different coping techniques to deal with that challenge. Number 2, I would say culturally, it was a little bit of an adjustment in terms of how top levels listen down, right? So you have one approach to management, which I guess is building consensus, asking this, asking that, and then you have one that's more directive, hierarchical, and pointed in that respect. And that was a big part of the culture here. Not so much respect and listening downwards as upwards here
Hmm.
in a lot of cases. And then third, I caught myself noticing some of these challenges, but I like to have a solution in mind when I notice some of these things. And at the end of the day, on a small scale, we can all manage certain things in the way we do business, but trying to envision what the catalyst or the approach to change might be over the long term or over a larger scale was quite difficult for me. And it made me think about that. Do you adapt or try to change the sort of, do you adapt yourself or do you try to adapt the surroundings or change the surroundings?
Wow, Mo, I'm impressed. It sounds like you have to learn a lot about Wipro, but also about management and
Certainly.
and merging the global cultures as this program is designed to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's a match made in heaven, you might say.
Yeah. So, what did you learn about yourself in this process?
What did I learn about myself? Usually that's a hard question, but I'll go back to that Hogan assessment. That was it. I mean, the Hogan assessment, let me share one example. Did you know that despite being relatively self-confident, relatively comfortable talking in public situations, and relatively competitive, I'm actually not that ambitious?
What?
Yeah.
I did
I
not
wouldn't
know.
have believed it myself. I didn't believe it. And so I took the Hogan assessment and said, look, you got these three things, but you're still finding that direction. And until you do, your ambition will not be unleashed. It didn't actually say it in those words, but it inferred that. Just one
Wow.
example of a truly multidimensional personality assessment.
That's truly paradigm shifting.
Yeah. How about you, John?
Um, I guess I learned that I'm more trusting than I should be.
Really?
Yes. So, Mo, like you, I think I consider myself to be a broker of information and also a sponge where we like to soak up as much information as we can from every source that we can to learn as much as we can the fastest way possible. But I'm learning that even though someone may give you their view of a situation or their read on where the opportunities are or where the risks are, that view might be skewed by their personal objectives and their goals. And so when you're working for a large company like ours with varying stakeholders, you have to be mindful that people may not always give you the full truth. They might just give you the truth that really helps them look the best or helps them accomplish their goal the best. And so
It's very
it's really,
tactfully put, John. It sounds like you might have encountered a couple people rowing a different direction.
yeah, you could say that. And really learning about how to manage that culture of people being very competitive, but also helpful and somewhat self-serving took a lot of tact and allowed me to learn about myself and how I accept information and manage others.
That's wonderful. John, I can't wait till we run into each other again in just 2 short weeks. I'm looking forward to learning more about that executive presence you mentioned.
And I'm looking forward to discussing my Hogan results with you if you don't mind.
I'd love to. It's a date. See you
Great.
in April.
See ya. Put a little bit of buffer room on the end and stop broadcast.